All right, we're going to get started. Everybody, welcome Mike Ivy, first time speaker here. Security engineer by day. Awesome.
All right, thanks for joining. This is my talk, Secure Spouse, Secure House. But I'm not married to the name. It's just something that I wanted to share with everyone on like my journeys of recently getting married. Actually, it's been almost 2 years now, but thank you. There's a lot of like interesting things that I've experienced through this time, and being a security guy, you know, thinking like a security person, having to just work with my spouse on how to be more secure in the things that we do, how to collaborate. And so I figured I'd give a talk and kind of share some of the things that I've learned and experienced, and maybe give some ideas to the folks that are listening and watching this talk. All right, so we'll get started. All right, so yeah, who am I? Security engineer, pen tester, currently work for a mental health tech startup. Been doing this for many years. I can't believe it's already been 15. Feels like I just started yesterday. And got some certs, but yeah, just security guy. All right. Our agenda for today, so we'll be talking about just like introductions to security, governance and risk, and then security program development. And I'll have some closing thoughts at the end. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so a couple goals. This introduction. Let's make this a little bit bigger on my side. All right, that's better. Okay. All right, yeah, so we are the weakest link, right? My wife actually encouraged me to put that in the slide. I'm like, hey, thanks. Trying to make it more fun, so, and definitely if you have questions or thoughts, feel free to chime in. Yeah, so we are the weakest link, and you know, we want to make sure that we have good security practices, that we're constantly learning and adapting because like threats exist, and you know, we want to be able to respond and not get impacted in such a way that it just like really throws us off. I've had this idea of thinking of yourself like a business, thinking of our relationship like a business, or borrowing from the business world and things. And so for a security program, you're aligning it to the business goals and objectives. And that's what we're going to do here. So with our relationship, these are just some examples. We've got our goals and objectives. You know, financial goals and objectives, just, you know, to make sure that we are building and saving and investing, planning for our future. Communication goals, making sure that we're feeding into the relationship, keeping it strong, and doing the things that need to be done to maintain that. And then personal and professional goals. You know, we both have jobs and enjoy what we do and want to continue to grow in those areas, so be supportive of each other in those areas. Just some example goals and objectives. All right. So then we say, okay, like what are our assets? And so I'll ask the audience here, what's critical or one of the most critical assets? Anybody?
Home.
Home. Okay, home's good. There's another one, like most critical asset. Bank account, cash flow. Yep, these are all good. There's one.
No.
Health.
Babies.
Babies. Yes.
Credit.
Credit. Yep. A lot of good ones. The one I was looking for was us, the person. All right, but I also mentioned all the other ones as well. So yeah, we've got personal data, financial data, health data. We talk about physical assets. We talk about IT assets, work assets, and yeah, that's it. But yeah, there's a lot of assets that we have that we want to protect. Oh, and from the talk yesterday, personal biometric, that's something to think about that I'm now thinking a little bit more about. All right, so we have our assets, the things that we care about, the things that we need to protect. Now, winning over or showing your spouse, your partner, and actually, I know this is about spouses, but this could be just relationships in general. You can have roommates, friends, you know, you can apply these principles and practices to just making sure that together you're working together in a secure way. But yeah, you have to sell it. If I just tell my wife, hey, let's do this thing where we've got multi-factor authentication, strong passwords, she's like, why? Why do I need this for my Facebook account or what? So selling it, and these are just some examples here, but there are other ways that you can kind of sell it to your friends and family. Hey, it'll save you from having to potentially lose this very valuable thing or being impacted by it. If we take these steps here, it'll minimize the risk of that happening. And we'll get into that later. But yeah, so this is our introduction. And now we get to risk management. So this is why we can't have nice things. Couples risk management. All right, so can you name some threats? What are some threats, threat agents?
Babies.
Babies. Babies, that's a good one. Yes. Any more?
Preachers.
Preachers. Hey, there you go.
Kenneth Copeland.
Okay, yeah.
Bodies of water.
But, yes. Oh, yes, these are all good ones. So, yeah, I'm just going to click through. So I've got the normal, nation states, cyber criminals, terrorists, hacktivists, this is the normal stuff. Then we get to insider, and yeah, you've got your spouse, you've got parents, you've got kids, babies, and then other friends and family. And that insider threat, you've got to really watch out for it because there's some things that can happen there, and they're really high risk. They have access to a lot of sensitive things potentially. So yeah, we've got our threats, right? Now we get to, what's the worst that could happen? So here, it was fun trying to explain risk assessment to my wife. And so just taking an example of a car here that needs maintenance. And so, kind of walking through the assessment here, you've got, what's the likelihood of it happening? Okay, so the risk is unexpected maintenance issues. It happens, and depending on how old your car is, how new your car is, what kind of car, you can figure out the likelihood of these things happening and how frequent and how much it's going to cost you and the impact to you. So yeah, we do our assessment, we look at the impact. Impact in this case was rated 3, moderate, and these numbers, you can use any risk ranking calculator to kind of help you figure it out. So you can rank things and see what's high, what's medium, what's low, based on your own assessment. But yeah, we've got, this is a moderate impact. Likelihood is high. All vehicles need maintenance at some points, and depending on how you drive, that could be more frequent than others. Calculate our risk, and then we talk about what's our mitigation. So our mitigation, we establish our regular maintenance, make sure we go take the car, get them checked. Also make sure we have good driving practices, and that'll reduce the impact. So this is just an example of how we can apply something like risk assessment to our own life and what are those risks. And so next slide, here's some more example risks. We've got our risk register, which is just a spreadsheet here. But if you really want to, you could create one and just kind of go through this exercise, finding all those risks. We've got, this is a bit smaller on my screen, so I'll just kind of look over here. So we talked about maintenance. We've got technology, data breach. I'll spend a good amount of time talking about some technology things later on. Communication, the marriage or the relationship, or whether it's romantic or just friends. You want to make sure that you're good, because that can be a risk. And then of course financial. You want to make sure that your finances are in the best place that they can be, or working towards better finances, because that can cause problems. All right, so now we get into implementing the security protocol, security program development. And this will be more of just me kind of talking here, because this talk is really inspiration of things that I've gone through. But figuring out how to collaborate, how to store things in a centralized place where both you and your spouse or friends or family can access that information. It was a fun project to do with my wife. Notion, you've got OneNote, Google Sheets, all these tools are good for different cases. Actually, OneNote is the one we settled on because she had a lot of experience using OneNote. We can share notebooks and collaborate there. And so it's a great place to just document all the things. We can have information about our house or finances. Nothing detailed, because we'll get into like making sure that the stuff that you're storing has the right security for that service or software that you're using to protect that data. But here's just like high level manuals and just guides and documenting things that the other person should know. So yeah, finding a place to centrally manage or store your documentation. Also storing files. And so we've got, Dropbox, Google, Nextcloud if you want to run it locally on your own, which I do have a Nextcloud server. It was interesting, and I'll talk about this later as well, but just figuring out where to put files. Dropbox, you can pay very little for a lot of storage. Nextcloud at home, I have to be very careful about how much I put there because I'm only going to buy so much storage, at least for now. So just helping the spouse figure out like where to put things and creating a directory structure where you can easily find those things when you need them, grouping them by year, month, and the area that you're wanting to like put it in. All right, so yeah, this is just some laying the foundation. Now we get to guidance and using frameworks. So we use frameworks, depending on the industry that you're in, there may be laws, regulations, standards that you have to also comply with. But here, you've got guidance. You can use the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's ISO. There's for the couple thing, or focusing on couples here, marriage counseling. They've got some great books. We actually went through it before getting married, and it was great. At least it was to me. There's a lot of things that they kind of told you about. It was like, oh, I didn't think about that. Let me, make sure I take that into consideration in future things. And sure enough, we've run into some things, and having that heads up was able to help me manage it a lot better, help us manage it a lot better. So yeah, we need frameworks, use frameworks. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Frameworks can be great. All right, so we're in like the building of the security program. So what's our roadmap? And so based on our risk assessment, based on gap assessments that we've done previously, we want to build a roadmap. We want to plan and prioritize the items that we need to work on sooner than later. There were definitely some issues that we found early on. It was like, we need to really take care of that and take care of it sooner than later. And there are other things that we said, we can push that out a little bit. We can work on this a little bit later. But yeah, building that roadmap, feeding in from all the work that you've done before, understanding your threats and risks, and prioritizing the items that need to be worked on. And being fluid. Some of those things may change. The priority of some of those things may come down due to something else going up or just the environment changing. But yeah, so working on our roadmap here. And okay, so the roommate agreement. Here we're talking about policies, procedures. These were some interesting, couple thing, trust building exercises, privacy of personal spaces. We're still individuals. We have things that we like to do separately and together. But having these defined, written out, and agreed upon. I didn't elaborate too much on this, but going back to selling it to the person, I'm thankful that my wife actually entertains me on this. And so while we didn't get super technical into it, she at least listens and we talk about it, and we've actually created a lot of these things for us. Yeah, you definitely want to review these on a regular basis. So once you create them with the security program, it's not said and done. It's a continual thing that you have to maintain. Threats are changing, risks are changing, and so yeah, this will just be a part of that process. All right. Security things. Okay, so policies, processes, and procedures. These are just some things that were really interesting. So vendor risk management. In company, you don't just go and buy some new service. If you do, then okay, that's not great. Usually you have a process where you look at the vendor, you make sure they have the right security controls in place that either match or exceed your security controls, your requirements. And so doing this for yourself, fortunately, my wife doesn't go and just install random things. And so there's that risk there is pretty low, but when we think about where we want to put things and what software we do need, there is a process that we kind of go through. I read the terms of service, I read the privacy policy. It's a thing I do for work, so I do it from home as well. And that just helps us make sure that we're choosing vendors that meet our security requirements, mostly mine, but my wife agrees with me. And so our security requirements there. Backup policy. I'll actually talk more about data backup later on because that was a fun process to figure out. Incident response. This is an interesting one. I actually went to a B-Sides talk back in 2015, I believe, and I can't remember who the talk was from, but basically it was like something really bad happened. Married couple, there was a really bad accident, and the wife was left with like trying to figure out things. She didn't know the Wi-Fi password, she didn't know the passwords to the accounts, and it really got me thinking, way before I was married, hey, I need to make sure that I don't build things in a corner without sharing that with my wife or spouse or friends. And so people that depend on these things that you're building and doing, make sure you have a process in place to share it with them and have it documented so like if something bad, when something bad happens, they can respond, and there's many cases of that where you'll need to be able to respond. And then security awareness training, one of our favorites. I do have some sites listed there. Stay Safe Online, they've got a lot of great content. I've actually shared this out with family and friends. And then CISA, they've got good content as well. I listed the Cybersecurity Awareness Month just because they usually put out a lot of good stuff there that you can share. But having security awareness. We talk about security things. If anything comes up, my wife is an iPhone user, I'm Android. And so I'll send her like, hey, you need to patch your phone. This thing is being actively exploited. And she's like, all right, I'll do it. I'll try to read and make sure like these things are actually critical. Not everything is, depending on what the vulnerability is. And so I'm not telling her every day or every week to patch, because she'll get tired and say, look, I patched already. But yeah, security awareness training, something you can definitely practice and do for your family and friends. All right. Online services security, just some best practices. And what's interesting about this is there's not a lot of sites that really make it easy for couples to have separate accounts, but then that are connected in a way where you can still share things. There's some that do that pretty good. Amazon does it well. I can't think of other ones off top, but sharing the same account, which is what some couples probably usually do, doesn't work all the time. And it's not that you want to hide anything to have that separation. Sometimes you just want the algorithms to like show you your stuff and not their stuff. Or if you're like listening to Spotify, you don't want them to like take over your music because they start listening to it. It's separate accounts. But yeah, having or thinking through this process, thinking about how you're going to share credentials securely using a password manager. 1Password is really good and makes it really easy to share the credentials that you need to share. Regularly monitor your accounts. You can subscribe. I subscribe to Have a Link Home. I've got all of my wife's email addresses, my email addresses there so that we get notifications if anything comes up from there. Also, 1Password has their vault, which will notify you of breach passwords. So, and then of course, yeah, two-factor authentication. That's been an ongoing conversation. The way that I've framed it for my wife is the most critical accounts are the ones that we want to make sure are two-factor authenticated. And so that's been a little bit easier to digest. And going back to like selling it to your family and friends, sometimes you have to do that. You can't have them do everything. I do more, but that's me. You have to like be reasonable and understand them and give them things that they can actually do. So, all right. Security things, travel. My wife travels a lot for work, and I travel a good bit. Basic stuff, keep your devices up to date. Disable unused services, avoid public Wi-Fi. I actually have a little wireless router that connects to the hotel's wireless and creates a network for me that I carry around, and I've been working on building a little case for my wife to take. And it's really easy. It remembers, so it'll connect automatically. You connect to it, you open your browser, type in the password if you need it, but you've got your own network. She's got her phone, her tablet, her laptop, and I have the same. But creating that and making that easy for her is still a work in progress. Usually we use that when I'm traveling with her because it does take a little bit to set up, but I'm trying to get it to a point where she can do it on her own. Something to think about here. Securing systems. Depending on how different you are with your spouse, partner, or friends, can make this less or more complicated. And the devices, we have so many devices. Alone, I had 100 plus devices. And then my wife, even though she's not that technical, she has probably half of that. And so having to keep all those devices updated, patched, hardened. You can follow the CIS benchmarks. I've done this. Sit down, read through it, change all the settings in the device that you need to change to lock it down. And yeah, if you work from home, which I do, you want to have like network segmentation. So like my work stuff is on its own network. We've got GuestNet. Her work stuff is on a work network as well, and then my private stuff's on a private net. But yeah, something to think about, how you update, patch, depending on different systems, technology that you have, and segment your networks, just security practices here. All right. Secure and physical. This was a fun one. Whenever bad things happen, you should definitely learn from those things. We had our basement flood, and it was a sink that was left on and forgotten. And after that, I bought water sensors, and now I can sleep a little bit better at night. Because after the bad thing happens, like sleep and everything else just kind of gets terrible. It's like, oh, you hear little water sounds that you didn't hear before throughout the house. And you're like, what's going, you're chasing it down. It's just like a washing machine or something. But yeah, we've got sensors now. We already had some cameras, but the amount of cameras that we have outside has gone up because I traveled and my wife was at home by herself for the first time, and she slept on the couch. And I was like, first time being at home, I wanted to make sure she felt safe and secure, even though we live in a pretty good area. But we've got cameras now. I put sensors on all the doors. When a door opens, it chimes, and it actually made me feel safe too. So it wasn't just her. But yeah, thinking about like physical security, the safe is definitely interesting. We bought a safe, not so much for like having something to lock things in, but the part for me was fire. Wanting to get something that was somewhat fire resistant, fireproof, but also like a secure place where we can put things. And there's a lot of things to think about before buying a safe. Like there's little ones, there's big ones, but the security of the safe, it's a lot of research that you should put into that to make sure you pick the right one for you. Yeah. So, and of course, usually if you move into a house or apartment, you get the keys from the previous tenant. If they change the keys, it depends. Most places change the keys, but yeah, you want to make sure that that stuff is updated. All right, we're getting to the end here. Data security, and so yeah, this was fun. Just thinking about like how we store data strategically so that backups are easy. Going back to like our assets, we've got financial health, all this data, and she's got Mac, I've got Linux. We've got some Windows around the house, but making sure that it's stored in a way where backup is easy. Something to think about. You can't, what I ended up doing was having everything sync up from like a Dropbox to a Nextcloud, and then store on a centralized system that I can then back up from. But different file systems, putting a USB drive in a Mac, and the format for the file system is different for Windows, and trying to find like the right one to use on both just makes things complicated. But yeah, create a regular backup schedule. Ours is monthly. If we need it more frequently, we'll back up within the month, but monthly is good. Data retention, yeah, at some point you don't need the data anymore. I've got videos, I record a lot. For some reason, I've started recording a lot more after getting married, from the honeymoon and everything. And I have not done a good job of compressing the video files, and so like I got a GoPro, I've got 2 copies of videos. It's just crazy. But at some point, you don't need certain data, and you should put a expiration date on that data. Otherwise, you'll just buy more terabytes, and it takes a lot of time to copy over like 20 terabytes of data to another drive. All right, and then finally, for your security program, just review. Just continuing to feedback from the beginning of risk, threats, updating your policies, procedures, checking in with each other, and making sure that you're looking at areas that need to be improved. Yeah, just a continual assessment. And closing thoughts. Wow, I went over my time. I was actually going for 20 minutes. I see 27. But yeah, hopefully you got something from this. This was more of just me sharing my experience. I feel like this group could appreciate something like this. I'm not telling you to go and build a security program for your family, because they might look at you crazy. But if you can get something from this and use it, that's great. If not, hopefully you learned something about building a security program, but then also thinking about things you can do for your family. Yeah.
How would you handle the scenario of you're invested in an Android ecosystem and your wife's in iOS, and you end up having a kid who is obviously going to get an iPad, and now you're in this situation where you're just getting the world all on you of switching so that they can use iMessage with you and all that, and also they made it where you're either going to have to go buy yourself an iPad to manage the child safety stuff, or you're just going to have to hope your wife does it right. And it's like, it really puts you in a situation where you're almost like strong-armed into doing one or what. I mean, that's one of the ones I'm facing. Right?
Remember, if you get an iPhone, you won't come out your list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Funny enough, I do have an iPad now for that reason. It was either a phone or an iPad, and I found more use cases for the iPad where I could do things. But yeah, it's the one for those of us who are who can do more technical things. It kind of falls on us to be the ones to kind of carry more in the tech. But continuing to talk about it. I think I'm winning my wife a little bit on Android, but it keeps going back and forth.
Our network engineer has our Ethernet network separated from our Wi-Fi network. If somebody hacks in our Wi-Fi, when somebody does, they can't get to our network that's got all our data.
Yeah.
Backed up and everything.
Yeah, that's great.
We were doing that originally with pfSense firewall, and then we went to Ubiquity, the Ubiquity Dream Machine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got the Ubiquity Pro access points, and they're amazing. And I've got segmentation. Yes.
So currently, my wife and I are both Android.
Oh.
We use our Pixels as well. We use a lot of photos sharing through that way.
Yeah.
Have you successfully crossed the barrier? Or she's potentially going to be going to an iPhone soon.
Yeah.
Have you guys crossed the barrier of being able to seamlessly share your photos and backup photos?
Yeah, so right now it's between Dropbox and Nextcloud. Dropbox is, if it's gonna go on social media, we consider that public, so we can put it on Dropbox. And we've got a photo structure there and both of our phones sync up. If it's private, we don't want to share this, it's just for us, we put it on Nextcloud. She's got the app on her phone, both apps, phones and computers. Nextcloud right now is only internal to our home. And so yeah, it's the same directory structure on both. It's just this is for public things, this is for private things. It's working right now, but we're still kind of ironing out things. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh.
Yeah, so I'm super fortunate that my wife is not interested in a lot of this stuff, but she has met me on Signal, so all of our texting went from texting to Signal, and she also she's on a Mac, she uses KeyPass XC, which works really well for her actually, so that's pretty good. But I would like to get our network kind of a little more centralized. I was thinking about doing a VPN back to like the home and just having the home do like all the ad blocking and stuff like that. So we get that on the go. But I'm pretty hesitant to like say do this VPN because then it could be like I don't want it to be seen as like a stumbling block, like, you know, this thing is down all the time, or, you know, like if Comcast is being Comcasted, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't decided if I'm willing to like ask her to take that leap yet.
That's a good point, and I try not to get personally offended when bad things happen that I set up for my wife, and it doesn't work, but she lets it be known, like, this is not working, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not setting that up again.
That's the question, is it better, at least it's like good to like let it be known and not be like, well, I just turned that off, you know?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Yeah, it's finding that balance, and like if you can find something that works, that's stable, you can manage, that's great. But sometimes I just have a conversation in my mind and I'm like, do I really want to like go after this, or no, I want to save this up and use it for something else. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Cool. There's my contact info, and thanks for coming to my talk.